The reasoning why I think that's more appropriate is that I think if we have to cut $600 million, you'd rather do it in 5 months than 4 or 3.5. That being said, what the governor's office has indicated to us at this point is, and I'm not necessarily in agreement with this, is that his cuts are going to be focused less on Chapter 70. So trying to spare education, spare the schools at this point. What that does, however, is then there are just a limited number of other things that can be cut that affect the localities. Highway funds, transportation funds, lottery disbursements, etc. I've expressed in a letter that's being drafted right now to the governor's office some concern on that, that possibly the cuts should be spread around a little more evenly. I would suggest to your board, as I did to the Lancaster board last night, if there's still time to express your thoughts as far as the municipal cuts through letters from your own board as well as the Mass Municipal Association. That being said, I have, which I'm happy to express to you at some other time, I have my thoughts of the percentage that I think we're going to be looking at. I'd rather not say it at this time and be proven wrong a week from now. But under any circumstances, it's going to be difficult. I think what the board can do is, with what's seen next week, that can be taken as an omen of what will happen in the fiscal year 04 budget deliberations. The governor has to deliver his version of the budget, a proposed budget for fiscal year 04 starting July 1st of this year by the end of February. I think what we see next week will be the first chapter in that. Will be provide a lot of indications on where that next budget is going to be. Telling anything new that it's going to be difficult. I know what I've told you isn't very substantive, but right now you know everything I know. The governor's office, and we're calling them daily, they're still getting up to speed to an extent as far as their legislative relations people and getting back to us on questions that we have. That's to be expected of a new administration. They're less than a month old, but it has been the communication links haven't been great. I only put that down to them being so new and still bringing people in. I don't think it's they're ignoring the legislature or ignoring municipal officials. I just think it's that they're brand new.
The process will be that he proposes his cuts, and the House and the Senate have deferred to him, so there won't be debate over these cuts.
No debate.
It'll be executive decision. He makes the cuts, whether it be flat or ratios, however his formula is. Those cuts will be what get imposed on the municipalities.
It'll be reality. The legislature has given over that power until the end of this year, until the end of this fiscal year. There's a sunset on it of June 30th. Mm-hmm. So there's no debate, there's no chance for override. This is what we have. And
we anticipate that awareness end of next week probably, right? That's what I'm hearing.
Right. And as we go along, myself and I know both Senators Chandler and Antonioni will be happy to continue to come in here. I'm happy for, if you'd like me to participate with any budget talks. I don't know what your agenda is for the next few minutes as far as if your department heads have proposed potential cuts, but I'm happy to sit here and be educated.
We haven't requested that for this current year at this time. I guess my concern was that I was hoping, if they're Chapter 70 tends to be deferred to education, but is not a required deferment to education. Right. So if we impact, factor X on general government, and Chapter 70 money is less impacted, we may be required, just to provide our safety and public service requirements, some level of transfer of what was committed in Chapter 70 funds towards education back over to the general government side. So we'll have to look at that and decide, and we have that authority as to how we appropriate the money within the town. So it's not, if the governor takes an approach that he doesn't want to touch education, but we're forced in the community where there's some impact to education just based on maintaining minimum staffing at our fire station and whatnot within our police and DPW, our snow and ice removal, which is going to be, a bill that will come due the end of the year.
I think that's a fair balance across the board.
Yeah, so we don't have to, we don't have to follow, it was a question, I guess, was that we didn't have to follow in line with exactly how he was approaching general government and education. I think there's got to be some level of responsibility from the local officials, I would hope, or some flexibility on our end.
I'm sure there will be. One thing I would throw out, and I haven't had a chance to mention it to Town Administrator Ward, is that what I've discussed with some of my other municipalities is if there are other grants that the town gets, or pilot monies, or monies that are specifically allocated towards one type of expenditure or capital expenditure, what we're starting to explore is the possibility of getting permission from the state, whichever, either the treasurer's office or the controller's office in general, or the particular state agency that might be controlling those funds, to loosen up the purse strings, loosen up the requirements on those funds, and possibly allow those funds to be used for general government, if that's wanted by the town, and the other local officials that oversee those. I don't know if there's a list like that floating around, but I would suggest it might not be a bad idea to compile such a list, and we can take a look at contacting the various state agencies that oversee those monies. In one of my other towns, a type of pilot monies were mentioned, and that's what we're exploring. I don't know if such things, I don't have a list in my office, but if there are such types of programs or grants that the town, I know the town gets some, we'd be happy to explore the possibility of, and again, in these extraordinary times, the possibility of being able to use those funds for a little broader purpose than what they're typically given to the town for.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if
Sure.
I may. Representative Norton, I was just curious, and you probably don't have the answer, but are there any kinds of indicators for fiscal 2004? As far as, I know that, we're talking about a shortfall of approximately $600,000 for fiscal 2003. But are there any kind of indicators that they'll be using at the State House to have some kind of a projection as to what we're looking at in the next coming budget? I know that you're saying that the governor has to submit it by the end of February. Is there any kind of indicator of what he'd be using as a benchmark, and then what the Senate and the House would be using?
What the joint revenue hearing started today. The Joint Committees on Ways and Means met. I'm lucky enough to sit on the Ways and Means Committee in the House and sat through that hearing for a period. That hearing will continue, and the purpose of that hearing is to try to come to a consensus between the administration, the House, and the Senate on how much revenue that there will be in fiscal year '04. Right now, the rule of thumb, that hearing isn't over yet, the rule of thumb we're using is that we will have about $2 billion less to spend next year than we did this year. So we're starting out with a structural deficit of $2 billion. That's taking into account the fact that we already cut $2 billion this year. We're going to have to cut likely another $600 million this year. We raised taxes by $1.2 billion, and we spent $2.7 billion out of the $3 billion rainy day fund. So this year, well, between fiscal year 02 and fiscal year 03, we have used about $6 billion worth of resources to plug that hole. Those resources aren't there anymore. So we're figuring about a $2 billion deficit. So if you figure we spent $24 billion this year with our stopgap methods, we're going to have about $22 billion to spend next year.
Yeah. Senator, would you like to join us? I guess one, with the stopgap and the utilization of the rainy day fund and things like that, we've also taken a similar approach where our stabilization fund in town is down to $400,000, or between $400,000 and $500,000.
I know.
And I guess my concern is the mandates that are put upon the community. There has to be a push for relief on these unfunded mandates. We have ed reform and different things that we're required to spend, yet we're not going to have the local aid and the money's coming back from the state. There's already a disproportionate amount of spending from a local perspective that's skewed away from general government, that we can't even meet those needs today. And to go into a next physical budget, we looked at it last year. We were less than a couple percentage increases. It was just salaries. It was just headcount. There was no capital expenditures last year of any significance. But we're forced into, meeting a required spending limit based on a previous year's spending and from the state within our education system that then forces us to spend that same dollar amount this coming year or match it. And that will absolutely cripple us, I think, in the town if we don't get some relief on our state minimum required spending.
I think you'll see both the speaker and the governor have talked about exactly those issues. And I think you'll see some creative ways, I hope you'll see some creative ways of dealing with those in the governor's budget proposal, and I think you will in the House as well. And just one example that we've kicked around the House is the lack of support for charter schools, which I don't know if that really impacts Clinton all that much, but that's one funding that had been there prior to the fiscal crisis. It's not there anymore, the reimbursement to the towns. I think you'll see some creative ways of dealing with that. That specific word mandate has been kicked around a lot. And it isn't lost on us, and I don't think it's lost on the administration, though obviously I can't speak for them, that a lot of your costs are incurred because of these mandates. So everything's being looked at. And that's not to say, the governor has also said that with these 9B and 9C powers that we've given him, he may look at those mandates in his proposals that he comes out with next week. So maybe sooner rather than later that we can have that discussion.
I'll speak for myself, but I believe, based on everyone's actions here, the board supports and believes in education within our town, but that we need to be able to balance this crisis fair and equitably across the town, and if we have impacts, that it be impacted fairly. And we need to be able to have the flexibility to make the decisions as the town managers, the town fathers, to make those fair and equitable decisions. So not that they're easy.
Mr. Chairman, let me try to respond to that. I met with Carrie Murphy-Healy last week when she was in Worcester, and she was very interested in this whole mandate question because the mandate concerns everybody. It's the smaller towns, the bigger towns, the cities. Everyone is concerned about that. They're being killed by the mandates. The fact that you have to provide so much teacher training, which is required, is just one example of it. Worcester is one of the communities that will lose $2.2 million if a charter school goes into effect. We're one of 11 communities that face a charter school. We hope to have a moratorium there. But the impression that I got from our meeting with the Lieutenant Governor was that she is listening very carefully and she's hearing the same things over and over again. She seems to be willing to consider any kind of creative way that you can think of, and if you have ideas, my suggestion is to send them to them. Send it to her, send it to the representative or myself, and we will get it to her. There also some thought about trying to allow towns and cities to have a little bit more options in how they handle perhaps taxing powers. Particularly, I'm not sure how this is going to work in Clinton, but I think it would work. The meals tax, instead of letting you, if you would desire, to increase the meals tax, and that increase would stay here rather than going into the general fund. You're strapped for money. You don't have any money at this point in time to do anything with. So that might, the meals tax, the hotel tax, any other kind of situation that you can think of. What we did and I assume that the representative probably told you the final bill that went to the governor's desk, provided that any cut to a community would not force a community below the foundation budget. We wanted to make sure that the foundation budget was maintained. Now, this is wonderful in one sense, that we don't throw out everything we've gained in education reform, but it means that to get to that foundation budget, towns may find themselves strapped on the city side, the town side, municipal service side of it. And that's a problem. It's a problem for police, it's a problem for firefighters, it's a problem for DPW. It's a serious problem. And yet I can only say to you that wherever we go with this, wherever, the pie is only so big, and we only have so many places to take that money from. The 9C powers allows the governor to basically go beyond Health and Human Services, which is what he's allowed to do by himself. And that's why you've seen all those cuts coming in Health and Human Services. That's preeminently where he can go. He can do now local aid. He can go into higher education. He has a few more places that he can go to. I'm hopeful that he will use those powers very judiciously because it's important to all of us. I believe we've given him a blank check. We don't know how big the debt is. We won't know that until next week, and we don't know how he's going to use it. My hope is also that he will not use that to treat every community as the same. Every community isn't the same. They're different sizes and shapes, different needs, different concerns, different impact from the budget, different reserves that you have. And I hope that he will take those considerations into mind when he makes these cuts, because I think it's going to be critical to each and every town. Another rumor that has been going around is that local aid, everybody seems to be prepared to take those cuts in local aid next year. The problem is you're not prepared this year. It's coming 7 months into the year and you're not prepared, and it's disastrous for most communities. The rumor on the Senate side, and you probably have heard this too, Representative, that they're going to put some, because we have almost no rainy day fund left, and we have no place else to turn. There's probably some funding, some funds that maybe have some money in them that they're going to probably drain this year in terms of, the trust funds is the next step to go to. We're going to go to every single thing. Nothing's off the table anymore. But as such, the concern is that they're going to divvy out local aid next year in a much more cautious basis than they have in the past. If you have reserve funds, if you have taxing power, excess taxing power that you haven't used up to your 2.5 ceiling, you're going to have to use it before you get your full local aid complement. That is a problem for many communities. That will be a terribly serious problem. But what they're saying is this is a rainy day. It's kind of a northeastern rather than just a rainy day. Yeah. And you really, you just can't sit back and push towns and cities that have nothing really into a corner.
The trust fund issue is a problem. A lot of them deal with environmental issues. If that's a one-shot deal. If those are used now, then they're gone forever. And you're going to see certain programs, and that's the quickest one that comes to mind is environmental issues, but there are many, many others out there. If those go away now, they won't pay back ever or for a very long time. But I know those are being looked at. I know the tobacco money is being looked at very closely. And
lending is being looked at. The Senate has a new committee on long-term debt, which I will be sitting on. We'll be looking at what the state can borrow. The House already has had long-term debt for at least 2-4 years, something like that. And we will be looking at long-term debt as thoughtfully and as carefully as we possibly can. The news is not good.
And we're anticipating that bad news. I guess what our hope is, right now it falls to the governor, is that there needs to be a level of appreciation for a community like Clinton, where we don't have. I wish I could say the meals taxes would bring in several $million. I truly do, but they won't.
I thought of you as I said.
That won't deliver the goods for the town. But I know what you mean by alternative sources. But we just seem to have, we have tapped and taxed our citizen base so much over the past. It's not there, and it gets down to, you know, certain issues, and I get back to, in my mind, what I'll call these mandates, where, you know, we are directed by the state to write a check, and then at the end of the day, or the beginning of the day, the state isn't helping put the deposit in the checking account. We don't have the money to write the checks that the state's going to ask us to write unless they roll back those requests or those requirements. It's very simple. If they say do this, then to some degree they must fund it. And if they don't, we should have some power to say that this can't be executed upon based on the financial commitment by the state and the burden that's already been put on the town. Our bond rating with a $400,000 to $500,000 stabilization fund will go through the floor if we tap that any further.
I think, I said it once and I'll say it again, I really think that this board should send a letter to the Lieutenant Governor, who is going around the state listening, and you should tell her exactly what is the concern of the town of Clinton. I think it's very important that you do that. You should be heard. You'll find, I think, that you're not alone. There are lots of other communities that share the same problems that you do. But I hope you will go on record as saying these things to her so that she hears them.
Is there any possible way to get her here?
We can try. Sure, we can try. She's going every place else. Why
Yeah,
can't she come here?
Yeah.
Invite her to the Leprechaun Convention.
Right. We can't wait that long.
That may be. She may not want to be there then.
Let me say this, and then I'll have to leave, and I don't know if the senator may want to meet with you longer. I appreciate you starting and inviting me for 6:30. I think what is going to be seen here, both on the state level and whether you want it or not, you'll be forced to know on the local levels, through the rest of this year and into next year, you're going to see a drastic re-examination of exactly what are the core purposes and core services that government should provide. Even if you're not philosophically on that bent that government should do less, we're going to be forced into it. And as I was saying to Selectman Dickout prior to the Selectwoman Dickout, excuse me, prior to the meeting, there are, at least in the House, there are very senior members of leadership in the House that think, and I don't necessarily agree with them, but think that government, state government, does too much. And they're going to use this as a forum, as a mechanism to pare down what state government does. Now, if that translates into also the ability to release local governments from some of these mandates,
Then that's fair.
then that's fair. But I think that's what you're going to be looking at. I think we are...
That's the question, catch-22 though, State Rep. Naughton, is that if they feel that way, but then don't release the burden on the local municipality, that's an injustice. Ultimately to all the taxpayers in the state of Massachusetts, because they're relieving themselves of the burden, but they still feel that it's potentially an obligation for the local municipality, which gets back to unfunded mandates, which will cripple us.
Can I,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, just to pose a question, and I don't know if the issue has come up, but I'm sure that in the 351 cities and towns in Commonwealth of Massachusetts, that there have to be a number of communities out there that, with all that's happening and the reduction of money that would be coming from state government, what happens if there are truly communities that cannot meet the requirements? I mean, does the state have a plan? I mean, are people talking about, I'll just hypothetically say that through the reduction in local aid and through all of the other things that happen, that the town of Clinton, through every effort that we make, is unable to meet our requirements and accommodate all of what goes with our commitment to government to receive this money, you must do this. Mm-hmm. And we look at every avenue of how we can generate revenue, and we still can't come up with a balanced budget for ourselves. What happens if the town of Clinton says, well, guess what? We're raising our hands. There's nothing else we can do. What's the Commonwealth of Massachusetts going to do? Has the state thought about? I mean, I'm sure that's going to happen to some communities.
I think it will. I think, and it may happen to some not that far away. And I think there'll be numerous communities around the Commonwealth that'll find themselves in that situation. I think what you'll see is that what happens next week with the governor's proposals will be a litmus test, will be a laboratory for the FY04 budget. I think what you're suggesting, Mary, will not be able to be dealt with as far as the state is concerned in what's coming down next week. But I think that will give us guidance, for lack of a better term, for what we do in the FY04 budget. And it's going to have to be some pretty creative things. I mean, I've been scouring, Tom Finneran came to us at the beginning of the session. Any ideas you have? I mean, if your college roommate lives in another part of the country and sees they do something creative there, let me know about it, see what we can do. And we're going to have to be creative. We're going to, in a good way and in a bad way, I guess. I mean, I threw this idea today, and it may sound silly, I don't know, but we'll have to think it out. I heard that the city of Buffalo, New York, has started to put advertising inserts into all of their public, every bill, every letter they send out to their constituents, to their citizens. And they're making some money off of those. So just said to the Speaker on Ways and Means today, I said, what if we did that with all state correspondence? I mean, what ideas that may seem crazy at the start, something like that, but hey,
Yeah.
100 million here, 100 million there, pretty soon you're talking real money. Any ideas, and I think they'd be very accepting of ideas like that from the local level as well.
I mean, the FY04 budget we'll have to deal with, whatever that may be, and we'll have to manage and make the appropriate changes in government and services, possibly and quite likely. My concern is what's going to occur next week. I'm concerned about FY04, obviously,
Absolutely.
but we'll have time to, as a board and as a community, plan, prioritize, and then execute whatever that budget will be based on town meeting and the people of the town of Clinton voting on that potential budget. But what occurs next week is going to have to be reactive on our part.
Getting back to what Councillor Dickow asked, what is going to happen to those towns? My grandmother used to say, you can't get blood from a stone. You can't make a town or a city give money to you and follow orders they just can't do. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. And there are going to be several, I was going to say a number, but I'm almost afraid to say that are in this position. Not everybody is Wellesley and gets 4% of their budget from the state. Not everybody has several $100 million worth of reserves, like some other communities have. Each one is different, and everyone is concerned. Every single one is concerned. I really believe that you might be more comfortable if we can get the Lieutenant Governor to come out and listen.
Yeah.
And if, at the very least, I think a letter from you is important, so that your views, she's carefully taking notes when she comes, by the way, and she's coming to communities far smaller than Clinton. And I think we should ask her to come. Your next meeting is when?
2 weeks from tonight.
We can't wait that long. We should try to do it
We'll
next
meet
week.
whenever, I mean, even if it's
Okay.
during the day or...
Let's see what
When
she
is the
says.
governor supposed to come down? I mean, to meet prior to the governor's
A week from tomorrow is what we're being told.
Thursday.
But if I cannot sit here and say, Senator, I couldn't sit here and say, are they going to be, number one, because they're not really communicating that much with us, and again, not because they don't want to, it's just the speed of events. Are they going to have a trust fund or a pool set up over here, almost like an emergency reserve for communities like you described? I can't sit here and say if they're going to do that. They've given no indication of doing that. But these are the ideas that need to be communicated. We'll try to prevail upon
I
them
mean,
and try and
when we
get
look
out there
at,
next week.
when we look at our budget, the approach we took last year, we had 0 capital expenditures. I don't think we added any headcount in the town. We had some built in for the filtration plant that's not online that we don't have added that headcount. I believe, in fact, we had a policeman retire. We didn't backfill that position. So it was purely contractual salaries and headcount. That is the general government budget for FY03. That's what we are. So when we're looking at cuts, we're looking at some minor services and then, not to scare people, but it's positions and it's salaries and it's, how do we get creative with staffing?
But it has to be across the board. It can't be just in one department. It has to be a fair and economical way across the board. It just can't be
It can't
certain
just
pick and choose
Well,
certain
it can't
departments.
just be government either.
Right, that's what I'm getting at. I mean, it's got to be across the board.
So as long as we have the flexibility to look at, whatever the cut is, how we can deal with that, I believe we do,
Right, we should.
depending on the funding
Remember
sources.
also that the agreement that we sent to the governor that he signed was that of whatever that number is, 500 million, 900 million, only 1/3 of it can come from local aid. You are aware of that?
Yeah.
Only 1/3 of it. So that the other 2/3 are coming from the state side. So you're at best, you're dealing with 1/3 of $500 million. That is a little bit of a help to some of the towns.
I mean, there's a range there. Is it, do we deal with a $200,000 cut?
That's the problem.
Is it a $500,000 cut? And when we look at what we have, that is tough to come up with.
I mean,
200,000, 500,000, that's a huge
Sure.
Yeah,
variance, so we need to have more.
yeah.
I mean, the only saving grace is what I described at the beginning was you'll have 5 months to deal with it instead of 3.5 or 4. It's, you gotta look, situation like this, you have to look for the silver lining any place.
I mean, if it was 3 or 4 months, I guess then you play the game of ending your year not in a physical budget that the state requires, the DOR requires you to do, and you can't do it. Getting the lack of getting the blood out of a stone, you can't get it.
You can't do it.
So, so we should anticipate that number coming down next Thursday. That's the
That's the latest. That's
the
what we were
latest.
told by the governor's legislative office today. And as soon as we get it,
We'll give it to
we'll call the
you.
board. Call Michael,
Okay.
And we
we'll
will,
get in here
And then we'll meet right away on that.
as soon as we can after that.
we will
We will
try-
put that request, I'm
No.
sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, we'll put that request into Lieutenant Governor.
Yeah.
We can get her in here within the next few
Would
days.
someone like to make a formal request?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we ask our legislators, representatives to make an official request for the lieutenant governor to make a visit and meet with the board and the administrator and other personnel.
Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Senator, thank you for coming forward.
Do you have any other questions to ask me?
We were, just wanted to certainly get your perspective on things.
I do.
Yeah,
Mr.
sure.
Chairman, just one other question, Senator. Do you know I know there's been some speculation about the lottery. I mean, because as it is today, as we know it, 100% of the revenue, other than the
Goes to
operating
local.
cost, comes back to the cities and towns. Do you see that as something that will be changed in the future? Because that, I think, really could be, again,
think-
catastrophic for us if they start playing around with that lottery money.
One of the real issues that we will be debating this year, I think, is the whole question of casino gambling. It's going to come to a head. It's going to come to a head because we have such a financial crisis. But the financial crisis isn't going to be helped by it this year. If we were to go to casino gambling, we're talking 3 years out at least. So it's not a major thing that we're going to deal with this year. However, the last report that was done a few years ago, said that if we went to casino gambling, if we did adopt casino gambling, it would have to impact the lottery. There's also talk about perhaps one way of making a saving is to change the prizes in the lottery, cut down the prizes in the lottery. People get very disturbed about that because the lottery has worked well. It's been a very effective source of revenue for local aid. And most towns are very concerned about any tinkering with the lottery at all. This issue of casino gambling, of course, is a much bigger issue. And the fact that we have a lottery already suggests that, you know, we can't say, well, we don't approve of gambling. We already have gambling. It's a question of whether we want to expand it to casino gambling. That will come with, if it comes, with, I believe, the use of slots in slot machines in racetracks. And I'm sure if we get it to the racetracks, I'm sure that there's going to be a push to get it elsewhere as well. I'm not sure how far this goes. I'm not sure, you know, what the appetite is for that. But there is a feeling that perhaps the time has come for that. There are arguments for it. There are arguments against it. To have casino gambling, you're obviously going to have some Indian tribes. We have only one that has federal recognition, and that's the Wampanoags that are on Gayhead, which would mean that it would probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of Fall River and New Bedford that a casino would be sited. Two other places that are talked about are the Nipmunks near us in central Massachusetts on the Warren, I guess it's Warren, Sturbridge area. And then another one, possibly in the third one, would be out on the New Hampshire line, the Methuen, Dracut kind of area. I'm not sure, those two other Indian tribes are not recognized. So this is hypothetical at best. But the thought is that you would want, if you have a casino, you would want it in a rural area, not a city, because casinos bring their own problems. They bring good things, they bring some problems with them as well. If you put them out in a rural area, the problems do not express themselves quite as vividly. But that will be a major debate, I think, that lies ahead.
What about, Senator, the state of New York owns and coordinates, I'm not sure if it's tied with their lottery or not, but they have state-owned off-track betting. Could they tie that into their lottery system here in the state?
They could do anything they want at this point.
So they could run that as additional revenue?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, our lottery, not our lottery, our racetracks are subsidized. And if you, the feeling is if you put slot machines in there, they would be, you know, meccas for people coming to use them. I don't know. I just don't know. I think we should look at this very carefully before we jump into something that we don't understand what the impact is going to be. Anything that hurts our local aid. I mean, I've had towns say anything, but don't touch the lottery because we need that money. Can't touch the lottery.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
But you know, when you talk about the racetracks, and I don't think you have to go far. You can go to Lincoln Racetrack, which does have slot machines. Now, I mean, that was a racetrack that was really just about on its last leg.
Sure.
Right.
And how it has come back. And I mean, I would venture to say that I don't think there's many problems down there. But,
is
you know,
Rhode
you do
Island?
have
Yeah.
like Suffolk Downs and you have Taunton, I mean,
Struggling.
that are just
Struggling.
right,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, if it's adults that are going to do the gambling. I mean, personally speaking, if I was a legislator, I would have a long time ago looked at that, because I think there was too much emphasis put on quote unquote the lottery, and if you had casino gambling, people would buy less games and spend less money on games and tickets associated with the lottery. But you know, you go to Connecticut, you go to Foxwood, or you go to Mohegan Sun's, and it's just one line after line of
Massachusetts cards.
Plates.
So, you know, those same people that are gambling down in Connecticut and any place else are still buying Massachusetts lottery tickets. So, I mean, the argument that, you know, it wouldn't bring, what additional revenue would it bring to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts? Well, it's got to bring substantial as far as I'm concerned, because all we keep hearing is the revenue that's generated by Mohegan and...
Yeah.
Well, I think two things. One is that we are going to find ourselves surrounded. Rhode Island is talking about a casino. We hear that New York is talking about putting one in the Catskill area. Maine is talking about putting one in the Sanford, Maine area. in the southern Maine area, in other words. So we're going to have casinos around us, one way or the other. That's number one. Number two, to think that casinos are going to solve our problems really isn't true, because for all the money that the state of Connecticut gets from their casino gambling, they have a $900 million debt. They're in deficit. So it just doesn't work out.
Well, I'm not
One-
suggesting that casino
Changes.
gambling is going to fix the deficit in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm just saying that
But
this
that's
has
what
been a
we are
debate
thinking,
for-
that's what
right.
we've been encouraged to think. I mean, I go back and forth on this because I'm not happy with the gambling piece, but I'm trying to be practical about this, and I don't want to see us lose money that we should not be walking away from money that other states are going to get. If they're going to gamble, the thought is, why should we let them go to our neighboring states to do that? It's a sizable number of cars that we're talking about that sit in Mohegan, was it Mohegan?
Mohegan.
Yeah.
And the other one. So I don't think I can just put blinders on and say that's wrong, it's morally wrong. I think we have to look and see what are the numbers and what will it mean to everything else that we have. I think that if we lower the lottery and lower the prizes, I think that will have an impact. And we have one of the richest lotteries, if not the richest, in the country. Counselor, you probably know better than I on this one.
It's the most lucrative.
And-
I know Texas tried that, where they lowered their prizes and really tinkered with it, and they haven't been able to get it back, and they even tried to change it back now, which is kind of
I mean, we can't-
too late. Now they haven't been able to recoup that money.
So their revenues went down.
Yeah. Well,
When they dropped
did.
their prizes,
They
their
dropped
revenues went
prizes,
down.
and they changed the games around, and the prizes weren't as lucrative.
I don't
Now they
know,
lost out.
I don't know the details, but I know New York incorporates the New York Racing Authority, which is state authority, and that's revenue to the state. And whether or not we could incorporate that, where you look at a casino, that you're dealing with federalized Indian tribes and, long process, construction processes, whereby if the state and their lottery systems and their networks are able to expand and cover, similar to other states, I don't know whether Maryland does it or New York, but some of these, or Florida or California, I don't know. But if someone in Boston is looking into that, either within the lottery system or as a means of not lowering prizes or things like that, but another avenue of revenue, expands gambling certainly to some degree, but it certainly would be able to be controlled by the lottery, which is an existing bureaucratic function in the state, so you're not adding a new agency. I don't know, just my thoughts as something that could be
But I think it would have to
viable.
be monitored very carefully.
Absolutely, and that's why I think, with the types of systems that the state puts out with their blue machines, the
Yeah.
lottery machines that they have, those things are absolutely, to the
It was not
to
to
the
say
second.
to the subsidized racetracks down in Raynham and Taunton that if they do, if the state does allow casino gambling, it's not to say they're going to build a casino right on site where the dog track is.
Right,
So that's,
right.
that could be a huge
I mean-
win for the state and.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the goal is that we create more jobs and we have more taxable income.
Absolutely.
You know,
That's exactly what we're.
And
we're all
that's an
talking
economic
about.
turn that has to occur someday. And the other difficult thing we have is that so much of the state's, another avenue of state revenue was in the market, and the market went away. So
Right.
we've lost not only, the number of employed state workers have gone down, so your
You've been
taxable income.
frozen, you are aware of that. The state has frozen their employees. We can't hire.
Right, but I mean, in general public, the number of people employed and the taxable income has gone down in the state.
Considerably.
And so we have that to deal with, as well as the revenue that the state was recouping out of the market,
Right.
which got factored into the general fund.
I mean, everything. They claim that this is the perfect recession, like the perfect storm. A series of factors all came together at the same time to cause a disaster. And it happened, it seems to be worse here than in many other communities, but frankly, California has a $36 billion deficit. Texas has a $10 billion deficit. Florida has a rather major deficit. All of these states have deficits. They're all struggling. One thing I should say that you should be aware of, the Senate is very concerned about Medicaid, and that is now $6.5 billion of a almost $23 billion budget. And it's growing. And it's growing, and there's almost a problem of how do we deal with it. Well, one way that the acting governor dealt with it was to cut 50,000 people who are on mass health. That's going to put 50,000 people on the streets without any health insurance. It's also going to mean the people who have Medicaid, adults, have no dental privileges, they have no vision. If they, God forbid, have lost a limb, they can't use a prosthetic because they won't be paid for by Medicaid. And it's going to be extremely difficult to get things like wheelchairs and the things that are absolutely essential. Now, it sounds wonderful. They're going to save money with those 50,000, but those 50,000 people will end up in our emergency rooms. And unlike Medicaid, that isn't paid for, half of which by the federal government. We pay the whole cost of that.
Yeah.
So that's a real problem.
Yeah, see, Senator, I think that's exactly what, Mark said. There's got to be a balance. It can't all be from, to try to protect, and I am not against education, but, the indicators are that they've got to save as much of the education funding, but all of these tremendously needed services are just, in the case of 50,000 people on mass health, there's nothing there for them. And those are the most needy of the needy.
Absolutely. And you also don't want to lose police, firefighters. You don't want your firefighters to be unprepared when you have an emergency here. I don't know what's happened to your funds for plowing, but if they're like everybody else's, they're gone. Yeah. They're done and it's January.
We're 3 times over what we had budgeted.
Okay,
already.
That's what we're dealing with on the city's, on the municipal services side. And it's a very sad situation because something's got to give here. That's just all there is to it. I would like to see if we can get the Lieutenant Governor to come. I think she should. This is a major community in central Massachusetts. We will put in a request tomorrow and see if we can get her here.
Would appreciate that. We'd make ourselves available to.
Okay, that would be fine. And as I say, I know I only represent half of you, but I feel I represent all of you. So I will, my concerns are for all of you.
We appreciate the support, and actually congratulations on your appointments.
Thank you. For those
serving
who
in senior
aware.
positions, we appreciate that.
Well, I think it'll be very helpful in this. I'm the new chair of housing, and I'm also the new vice chair of transportation, which is going to be very important because we've not had anybody from Central Mass, or Western Mass actually, on, there's the turnpike. There's the first day I've gotten on this, it seems that we've lost the only airline that flies out of the Worcester Airport.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of work to do. But it's commuter rail as well, and that's, I know, an issue that is something you're considering as well. I think it will be helpful. I also serve on long-term debt, healthcare, public safety, energy, and counties. So I have a number of assignments, and I think they can be helpful to you. I will certainly make sure that they will be helpful to you.
Senator, who is chairing governor? I forgot, I was just going to ask it. Come back. I forgot, I just had...
This meeting or next? Thank you, Senator, for coming in. We appreciate it.
I had it in my mind and then
Junior moment.
yes. Junior senior. Oh, I'm sorry, government regs. Senator?
Government regs, I'm not sure. I can call you and let you know.
If you could.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is a review of the minutes.
So move.
The minutes are for the December 11th commuter rail meeting.
Does mine-
Okay, all in favor? I'll abstain, I was absent that meeting. This, yeah, I won't approve them because I wasn't here. No, I don't have a problem with the minutes, I just wasn't here, so I can't vote.
I just wanted just to, as the board entitled here on a call, but on the dog complaint hearing, the complainant had sent an email indicating that the situation had been resolved to satisfaction. However, the dog officer is here and would like to give the board an update on that case and then explain his actions that he took in that matter.
Okay.
Michael, put the heat on this place?
Do we have any heat?
Okay, why don't we bring forward the dog officer then, Steve? Would you like to come forward?
Usually this
Good evening, Steve. Good evening.
Steve, long time no see. Oh, I
You want to read those over if you'd like, I can just get started and just kind of give you a...
Yeah, this is in your report of November and December that we have in our packet as well, so if you guys have
Do
read
you
that.
have that? I mean, there
Yeah.
was another call prior that you may not have had in the package, so you may have read all of them but the last call that I had.
Okay. So Steve, I'm not opening the hearing because the owner, the complainant has pulled back his complaint.
Okay.
So, but this will be just an opportunity for the dog officer to convey his position on what's been occurring up there.
Okay, sure.
Okay?
Just so I can bring you up to date on this, where it did come to a hearing. This has been an ongoing call since November 17th. It's been a barking dog issue. The call started coming in, I had like 2 calls. The resident number that I was given, I went up, nobody was home, left my usual notification, and I ended up going on vacation for my usual December 1st trip. By the time I came back, there were several more calls, so I responded again. Just to make a long story short, I was given the wrong address. It was the neighbor next door, which finally, the one I was hanging my notices on got tired of my notices and called me and said, you have the wrong person, it's my neighbor, okay. Then we started making headway. You know, and I talked to the owner of the dog on 3 different occasions. You know, first time we tried to just take the dog to his mother's during the day so the dog wouldn't be around. It helped because when I went up there were several dogs barking. There's dogs over on Wilson Street, a couple others on Acre Street, another one down on Oak Street. So it was like, at first I kind of felt the guy maybe getting a bum rap because there was so many dogs barking. So I kind of had to quiet down the whole neighborhood to zero in on it. I certainly would say that the owner, Mr. O'Donoghue's dog, definitely was barking, but he was making efforts. And like I say, I think the individual, Mr. Greenline, just wanted instant relief, and sometimes it's just not possible to give somebody instant relief.
Sure.
So by the time I quieted down the neighborhood, got the right person, dealt with the right dog, I made headway, and that's why he's calling. But I felt, Michael asked me, and I just felt, look, I'm here. You know, I'd like to bring you people up to date, because I got a feeling it's going to come back there.
Has the dog been removed from the neighborhood, or is
No.
it still there?
What he's doing is he's bringing the dog to his mother's house during the day
Okay.
while he works. I suggested a barking collar, and by taking it to his mother's, you know, it made him aware that his dog was barking. He didn't feel his dog was a barker. Well, he's learned differently, and it is a barker.
Okay.
However, you know, when you get a neighborhood of barking dogs, you know, one's egging on the other.
Yeah.
As you can see on my last response, which was the night of our the first scheduled hearing, probably half an hour after the hearing was supposed to go on, I got a call. It's like, here we go. I was down there probably within 5 minutes. I went right up Baker Street and right up to where the dog owner. On my way up Baker Street, I noticed someone walking down the road with a cell phone in hand. Didn't give much thought to it because I was on a mission, because I could see the dog at the top of the hill there. So I get up there and nobody was home, so I wrote up another note. went down to the police station, because that's where the call came through. They called the police called me. So I went down there just to let them know nobody was home, that I'd be back in half an hour. So I'm sure there's gonna be some barking going on, but I'm gonna give the owner half an hour to hopefully return, put the dog in, or else I'm gonna take the dog. As soon as I exited the police station, I got a call. He was back home. Went right back up there, saw Mr. Donahue, spoke to him. Like I say, he'd gone down to Turn Hall to pick up his daughter. Put the dog out. He was gone for 15, 20 minutes. The dog was barking, which then he said to me, he says, can I file any kind of harassment charge? Because I get 7 messages on my machine where somebody's calling me, letting the dog bark, hanging the phone up. Call me, letting the dog bark, hanging the phone up. 7 messages. And then it dawned on me that Mr. Greenlawn was the one standing down the road with the cell phone just below the dog. So in my opinion, it's like you want the dog to be quiet. You don't stand out there and aggravate the dog. So it's kind of a two-way street. That's why I wanted to continue and at least give you an update on this, because I got a feeling it's going to continue. I wish people, if they're going to go to this degree and they're going to take my time and take your time, for hearings or whatever, then follow through with them.
Well, I agree with you, but I think there has to be some level of understanding in regards to a dog, that a dog will bark, and that a dog goes outside, if it goes to the bathroom and it wants to bark, it should be able to. And the owner that owns the dog, that lets the dog go out to go to the bathroom, that barks, shouldn't be having to get hauled up to town hall. It's the excessive dog barking. It's the dog that's barking at 4 and 5 in the morning and barking at midnight and 11 at night. But, if it's a half hour, an hour during the day, then,
And I believe, unless I didn't check my records right, most of all these calls, either during the day or early evening. I have nothing after 10, and I have nothing before 7.
And we don't have a noise moratorium in town. But
Right.
we need to explain to people, because I think a lot of these people this guy called my house.
Oh, really?
I mean, a dog's gonna bark. It's, is the owner being responsible to their dog? Half of these dog complaints are neighbor-to-neighbor issues that have nothing to do with the damn dogs. And it does waste our board's time, and it wastes your time. Some dog's barking for a half hour when it goes out the bathroom. Sorry, neighbor, but the dog's gonna do that. And it's crazy. And it's abusive when you get the number of calls that you get, like these logs report, and that the police logs report.
Right. And I'd just like to refer back, a lot of people, they make an extra bitch if they can't get me. It's like, well, if you hear, what people have to say on the phone, that's why they don't get me, because nobody in my house is allowed to answer my phone. They get my answer machine, and then I respond accordingly, because I won't have my children exposed. I'm not saying this case, I'm just saying.
Yeah, no,
that's
no,
the rule in my house, that you do not answer my phone, because if it's a dog call, I will not have my children spoken to in a nasty manner. They can talk to my machine and talk nasty to my machine all they want, but they're not gonna talk to my children that way.
I just think, it kind of there needs to be somewhat of a level set, that, if it's not strange hours of the day, and it's not constantly all day long, that dogs are gonna bark.
Yeah.
And that people need to understand that.
Originally,
Some
one
folks
of
don't
the
get it.
complaints, I'm not sure if I got it written in there, it was supposedly a 24/7 deal, which I've made several other trips, on my way home, if I gotta go out on other calls, make it up on that, and it never was the case. I couldn't, at any given time, go up there and find that dog up there. It was, the only time I found the dog up there is when I received the call. And sure enough, the dog's up there, so,
Sure. Okay. Thanks.
Sure.
Any questions, folks? No. Okay. Thanks, Steve.
okay. Have a good evening.
Next on the docket is CDAG grant proposal, Economic Development Director, Don Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did everyone on the board see the 3-page spreadsheet that I left in your mailboxes today? If you didn't, I'll run in and, yes, that's it. I actually would have liked to have included that in your packet, but the numbers were changing dynamically and really didn't get it sorted out until late in the day yesterday. And that actually is a good summary for you. But what I'd like to do is just really sort of read to you the first couple of paragraphs from question 1, which really lay out the project, and then I can just kind of walk you through the spreadsheet. The project as described, and the total sum is slightly different than what I put in your packet, but only by a few $1,000s. The town of Clinton is requesting $2,400,640 for the purpose of creating streetscapes that include sidewalks, granite curbs, curb cuts, trees, tree grates, benches, and the replacement of water pipes in downtown Clinton. The project area is shown on the attached site plan, which I do have one attached in the packet in the submission that's going into the state, includes both sides of High Street from Church Street to Water Street, one side of Water Street from High Street to Main Street, one side of Main Street from Brook Street to Church Street, one side of Church Street from Main Street to High Street, one side of Union Street from School Street to High Street, and one side of School Street from Church Street to Pleasant Street. So that's the course that we're taking. And with the exception of Main Street, we are proposing that we will be doing water line replacement in all of those areas. Main Street, we had to pull out because it was, not that it's not needed, but it was the lower priority in checking with the DPW superintendent. It was the lower priority compared to the other places, and he did feel that future PWED grants may be able to address that issue. So it's not that it wouldn't be addressed, but not within the scope of this project. Now, having said that, we intend to, and if you actually reference the third page of the spreadsheet, it lays out basically what we're talking about aside from the water pipe replacement. Granite curbing, concrete sidewalks, brick for detailing where appropriate, trees, the type of trees that will lend themselves to a streetscape atmosphere, benches, waste receptacles, lighting, electrical conduit for the lighting where required, and just dealing with general conditions, whether it's grading, what have you. And on the front page where we have the water improvements, you can see that, for instance, on School Street, the lines now are either 6 or 12-inch lines. They would all be upgraded to a 14-inch line. On Union Street, we're replacing the 12-inch line with a new 12-inch line. Church Street, upgrading the 6 or 12-inch lines to 12 inches. And on High Street and Water Street, replacing the 12-inch lines with new 12-inch lines. We'd actually looked at replacing some lines and trying to clean and reline some of the lines so to try to keep the cost down. And some of these pipes are old clay pipes that are about 120 years old, and they just don't lend themselves to that. So really, I felt while we're in the ground anyway, or while we're addressing street issues, let's try to address water issues as well, knowing the water issues that the town has. And along that vein, looking at the $100,000 that would be required from the town as its matching funds, if you will, to this grant, since we could leverage, if you look at the subtotal on the water improvement line, if you look at $604,000 of actual water line work to be done, and 10% line item for engineering, inspection, that type of thing, you're looking at $664,000 worth of water improvements that could be done by utilizing $100,000 from the Water Improvement Fund. And if you look at the larger picture, you're actually enabling a grant that's in the $2 million range to go forward by earmarking $100,000 from the Water Utilization Fund, Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund, I'm sorry. And that money would go to the original intent, which is to improve the water infrastructure. So that was one. I actually pondered a long time trying to sort out where in the world in this economic environment we could get $100,000. And when I got the idea, I did sit down with Bill Spratt, and we've had several discussions. And as I said in the cover memo to you, Bill is in favor of utilizing that money to realize that type of return. And he's gone over all of these plans. I've solicited his input as to where the priorities are. If we ever did have to cut back the scope of this plan, we know where we would need to cut back. I felt that we should try to go for as much as possible under this grant. I would much rather be told that theoretically we may have to scale back some of the project rather than feeling like we left something on the table, knowing the need that the town has and knowing that we really won't have any other avenues to pursue some of this work if we don't do it through this grant. So having considered all that, that's why we are where we are today. The estimates that you have in these spreadsheets are just estimates. They're certainly not hard quotes, but they're conservative estimates given to us by a very qualified engineer who's done many of these projects before. And as with any budget, it's our best estimate. They could be higher, could be lower when we actually go to do the work. We do say in the bid package that in the application, that if the bids come in too high, we would go out to rebid. And if we still are at a figure that's too high, then we'll scale back the project. So we have a plan as to how we would deal with that. State officials have come out and met with Kate Griffin Brooks, our consultant, and myself. They have toured the site. They were very, I would say, very impressed with the project that we're talking about. It's an aggressive project, but they seemed comfortable with it. I spoke with the senior official as recently as this afternoon to let her know that I was bringing the plan forward to the Board of Selectmen tonight, and that would be going out in the mail to her tomorrow. So she's already noted that, and she'll be looking for it. The one thing that, excuse me, I'm sorry. The one thing that we did cut, and if you haven't noted it, I want to make sure that you understand. The one thing that we did cut was the pedestrian walkway in behind the storefronts. We had talked about connecting the post office parking lot, the fields, and the school with that walkway. The logic for cutting that was really threefold. One was a cost and a priority issue. Another was the potential for possibly creating an unsafe area. The police had not expressed that concern. I've not met with the police on that, so I don't want to infer that I've spoken with the chief about this. This is my concern. But it was the potential. And third, once I really thought it through, from an economic development standpoint, I didn't really want to create an area that would allow people to bypass the storefronts. I want people walking down High Street and utilizing the new nice area and seeing all the shops that are down there and maybe doing some impulse buying as they're walking past a business. So to divert people from the business area, to me, wasn't the strongest use of economic development funds. Mm-hmm. So really, those are the three reasons why it's been removed from this proposal.
So in layman's terms, or to simplify this, taking $100,000 out of the, basically, in our water rate structure, we've put in place about a $200,000 investment in infrastructure each year, moving forward into next year. So next year, out of our $200,000, we invest $100,000 towards these identified projects that then get tied to a $2.4 million streetscape phase 2 project. So the town also incorporates approximately $600,000 in additional water infrastructure work.
That's correct.
That then gets funded by the grant.
That's correct.
So for $100,000, which we already will be investing in our, or recouping in our enterprise fund with our water rates that we've set, we're eligible for a $2.4 million UDAG grant. CDAG, excuse me, CDAG. I got it. And part of that grant incorporates $600,000 of additional water infrastructure work.
That's correct. I mean, the 600,000 is within the 2.4, but yes.
I understand.
You
Yeah,
are
so that's
leveraging-
part of the 2.4.
Yes.
It's a good deal, yeah.
Can I just,
Sure.
Chairman, Donnie, how secure is that CDAG money?
The money is funded under a bond bill that was signed off by Governor Swift. I asked that of the official this afternoon if there was any concern about the money remaining whole, and she said that she has heard nothing to the effect that that money would be touched, and that the office is moving forward as though everything is all set. Certainly in any communities that they've committed money to, I don't believe that they would pull back, but the uncommitted funds is what you worry about, which is really why I'd like to see us get in as soon as possible, so that, and it is a first-come, first-served basis. There's no deadline for this grant. It's, when enough communities get in with approved projects and that money is earmarked, then then the well runs dry.
So you need us tonight to take action on approving the enterprise fund investment in these projects?
And the scope of the project, yes.
Just one point of fact.
Sure.
Even if this deal with the state, the grant falls through, that $100 is not tied up, it comes back to the town.
Yeah, it actually never leaves the town. It would,
Okay.
it would only for purposes of the proposal.
I just want to make sure everyone out there.
It's our end of the investment that then the state recognizes. Our end of a $100,000 investment qualifies us for the $2.4 million grant.
Yes. Yes,
Chairman,
exactly.
I have a question for Mr. Law. Donnie, on Main Street, you list 1,100 feet of Main Street. Which side is that?
It would be, if you're coming down, I actually should have explained that. I'll actually take you from the lights at High Street. When you're coming down High Street, down Water Street, you'll be the right-hand side, which is where Prescott Mills is. So we would redo all that work in front of Prescott Mills, and we've discussed that with the owners there. Then you would, taking a right down Main Street, it would be the right-hand side, the side where the liquor store is and D'Angelo's and so forth. So we'll be going down that side.
Towards Brook.
Towards Brook Street. And it's important to note, too, that this project we probably won't be able to coincide it with this activity, but it's going to enhance the Chapter 90 money that's coming to town that the DPW and the fire department have leveraged, where the DPW and the fire department have Chapter 90 monies coming in to completely redo the intersections where all three of the lights are. So it's, and the handicap accessibility and the like will be handled by those grants, so we'll be tying into all three of those intersections.
So the sidewalks from Church to Water will be handled by the fire department upgrades or improvements?
The sidewalks from Church, no, the sidewalk from Church to Water on Main Street would not be touched.
Well, that's where the lights are happening, right? That's where all the controls are happening for the fire department.
No, I'm talking about the lights at Depot Square.
Right, but there's gonna be lights placed on Main Street in the vicinity of the...
Main Church, there'll be.
Yes, I'm aware of that, but that's, we actually did at one point, to be honest with you, we did have that sidewalk from Church to Water on Main Street in the proposal, and we had to take that out because it was driving the cost well beyond what we could submit. And we talked about being able to either pursue, for the water, to pursue PWED money at a future date. For the sidewalks, we basically just had to take it out.
What type, but there's gonna be improvements made at the intersection of Church and Main. There's gonna be improvements made at the Main and Water Street intersection.
Yes,
And that's why you're saying the handicap accessibility issues at those intersections will fall under the Chapter 90 money?
they will. That they will, yes. And when they, I'm sure, I haven't seen the plans, but when they do the new lights at Church and Main, I'm sure that they'll have the handicap accessibility issues
That's all I was kind of...
addressed there too.
It'll all kind of gel.
Yeah, I was hoping we could tie that in too, but it was really something that had to give as far as the sidewalks go.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we allow Bill Spratt to secure the $100,000 from the Sewer and Water Enterprise Fund as our commitment to the CDAG grant application.
A second.
Under discussion, is this 100,000 coming out of our next year enterprise fund? correct?
FY04,
Fiscal
yes.
2004.
Okay, because I don't think we have it in 03s.
Right.
So, okay, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Also in your packets, I hope you noted that...
Very interesting.
Yes, there's a
Good
lot
stuff.
of, really good, excuse me, data in here.
Yeah, good
There's a
stuff.
lot of good reading.
It was put together really well.
Yeah.
Nice job.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's extremely impressive. There's a lot of purchasing power in the area that anybody planning a business would be well-served to read.
I have one last question,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman. Don, what's the time frame after the application is in to hear some type of notification? Is there a time frame?
Yeah, my understanding is it's approximately 4 to 6 weeks review period. And then this is actually, to be specific, this is a pre-application. And then if we're notified that we're invited to submit a final application, that's tantamount to approval. It's tacit approval. And at that point, we'd have to do a little more work, submit the final application, Again, I think that's about a 6-week process, 4 to 6 week process. So I think realistically speaking, we could have final notification in the April to May timeframe, and then obviously, then we have to start putting together documents, bid documents and so forth. So I'm hoping that by the end of the summer, we could actually be doing some work. Whether or not that's possible, it may be aggressive, but that's what I'm hoping for right now. Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Yeah.
while I'm here, I just have 3 pages to get signed, and then I can put these packets together.
Good job,
You
Don.
don't waste any time, Mr. Wall, I like that.
Oh, don't worry, he'll come back. I'll need to sign something else. I've seen that, all right?
That's
one?
That's the application, yes.
This was very interesting.
It really is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good information in there.
I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if the board wanted to take an actual formal vote to submit the application.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll move that the board go forward
standard.
with the formal
Standard declaration.
application, grant the application.
Is there a second?
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
This is the actual consultant's contract to do the pre-application, which is for $0, but I still want to have a contract.
$0, that sounds great.
I didn't know there was any such thing.
Yeah.
Basically, on spec, when we get the grant, then she gets administrative fees.
Which is understandable.
That was a well-done scope of work and nice
That was
project. Good work.
Yeah. Good
Nice
job,
job,
Donnie.
Donnie.
Okay, next on the docket is the administrator's report. Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few administrative business for the board's review. First is late night closings for the month of February. At this point, we've received requests from Clinton Turner's, Gale House Grill, Jack's, and Old Timer Restaurant.
It's a pleasure of the board.
Also move, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
The only discussion I would have is if there's any other requests that come in prior to our meeting, that it be approved by the chief.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
The next is a report from the Town Hall Use Commission for several uses of the Town Hall that they have approved or recommended approval to the selectmen. One is from the Leprechaun Society for the Leprechaun Convention on March 15th. The Ladies AOH for the annual Celtic Festival on March 21st. Clinton High School Class of 1953 for a reunion to be held here on June 6th, and Lindsay's School Dance for rehearsal on June 21st and a dance recital on June 26th.
It's the pleasure of the board.
Also move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Under discussion, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman. I have a question on the fee structure. So there's a couple of these that have no fees, and I was just wondering why that was.
I think kind of public service events based on, that's what the
Which one's
feedback
that?
coming out of the town hall
Steve, which one's that?
use. The reunion and the Leprechaun tend to be community service type events. There's no revenue being generated and no real resources.
He's asking
behind
about the
it.
Leprechaun
I mean,
Society.
like the 53, I know that's the
Yeah.
50th
Yeah.
reunion. I
Yeah,
think
they do that every year.
Yeah, every year.
So that was the recommendation coming from the town hall use committee, so I feel that we go ahead with that. All in favor? Aye.
The next is a request of the County Line Car Club, again asking permission to close off Church Street in front of the Town Hall to host their annual car cruises. It's a family event that they've been holding the last couple of years. They would like to do this on Saturday evenings of May 10th, June 14th, July 12th, August 9th, September 13th, and October 11th.
Pleasure of the board.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second it.
Under discussion?
Under discussion on that September 13th, that's not, is that the same weekend as Old Home?
I don't know, I haven't got to review.
So.
I would defer
Has this gone through
them.
this committee? Has that gone through the committee?
No,
No.
this is the park and.
The Old Home Day, not the weekend.
Right.
I don't know
The country
if
cars
that's,
up front anyways, okay, right.
Yeah, I'm just, I would,
They're flexible to change it.
I'm sorry.
They're flexible to change it if
Just on that last, oh, the
Yeah,
second
On
to
the-
last.
yeah.
First
September.
Saturday, but I don't know if they still intend on doing that this year. but-
Yeah, well, because I know it's
Yeah.
September, I would just.
Why don't
Well, I'll make
Steve
a-
would like to amend the motion to reflect that the September date won't be voted on until we get a calendar
Yeah, then I'll make
clarification
that
for
one.
Old Home Day.
I'll make it flexible, they're flexible to change it according to that.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion on the Country Line Car Club dates? Being none, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you. And the final item is dog officer reports for the months of October, November, December of 2002 for the board's review.
Pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to accept the dog officer reports.
Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Further new business?
The next item, we have older new business item is Council on Aging vacancy. This issue was brought forward at the last meeting. The Board of Selectmen deferred action on an appointment in order to ask the town council for a legal opinion as to whether a non-resident can serve on the council. Town solicitor wasn't able to be here tonight, but I did speak with him, and he indicated his review of the statute did not expressly prohibit someone from out of town being appointed. So his opinion would be it's up to the Board of Selectmen to appoint who they feel would be the best person for that position. So.
Okay, right now we have 3 people
Right.
in front of us,
Three
so
people that
that's who.
have,
Well,
Mr.,
The people that have volunteered, kindly volunteered to serve on the Council on Aging is Russell Moncom, Karen Card, and William Grady.
Mr. Chairman, I will, for the third time, move Karen Carr from 245 Green Street, and the reason being is that the woman now holds this position for the city of Worcester, very qualified, and I think it's just by virtue of the fact that she's willing to give her time, and certainly has a tremendous knowledge and background about senior affair issues and the requirements and needs. I think it's a great.
Yeah. So Mary Rose has nominated Karen Card. Is there any other nominations?
Yes, sir. I'd like to nominate Mr. Russell.
Russell Moncom?
Yes. Mr. Moncom. Yes, sir.
Okay. Karen's not here. Russ, you are here. Bill is not here. Are there any other nominations before? No. Okay. I'd like, if the board's open to it, and if Mr. Moncom would at least come, if he's interested in coming forward, I'll invite him forward if he has any words to say.
Mr. Chairman, could I just speak to that?
Sure.
I have no problems with Russell, but if we're going to move on it tonight, I think that all 3 applicants should have had the same, if that was the intent of the board to.
That's fine. We don't have to move on it
Speak to the
tonight.
issue,
That's fine.
in fairness to the other 2
Absolutely, that's fine.
individuals.
That's fine. Russ, would you like to come forward? We don't have to move on it tonight.
Well, I don't think it's appropriate. if we're
Yeah,
gonna-
that's fine.
I didn't hear what you said, Mary.
No, I said, Russell, I wasn't aware that, that we were going to bring the applicants or the people that are looking to be considered, that I think it's only appropriate if
What we'll
the other
do,
2
Russ, is
people have an
we'll,
opportunity to.
yeah, we'll notify the other 2 candidates and invite them to speak to us, if they so choose, and then we'll take action. You're here tonight, so I just thought if you
My
were
name
here.
is
you would
Russell
say something.
Moncom, I live at 20 Coin Street. I would consider your vote for me to be on the Council on Aging. I've worked for the Council on Aging for 6 years as a van driver. I got to know these people on a one-on-one basis. Personally, privately, talking with me, I see these seniors, a lot of them every day. I know their wants and their needs, and a lot of people ask me they'd like to see me because I care about them. What I would do, if you do elect me, I would go visit some of the shut-ins that don't see anybody from one week to another. And I do know a lot of people in town. I wish they had the money to buy a bus tonight. I would have had a truckload down, busload down here. I do care about them. Another thing I would do, I would go and sign it, get that petition that is out. I would get it to have it legalized and have it signed by seniors and elders, that the tax that they put on prescriptions, which I think is illegal, and I think the state says it's illegal too, I would do that. And I would go visit these people. Because some of these people, when I would drove, they didn't see anybody from 1 week to another. And you try, while you had them on that van, whether it was for a half an hour or an hour, you try to make them happy. And I did that. That's why I'd like to be on the council, and I think I'd be an asset to the Council on Aging, the board. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming forward, Russ.
Yep.
What I'd like to do prior to acting on the nominations tonight is afford, if we could notify Karen and Bill Grady as well, and let them have the same opportunity that we gave Russ tonight at our next meeting, and then we can take formal action that, okay?
Mr. Chairman, just to address this, I've spoken to the chairman of the Council on Aging, and she wanted me to convey her thoughts on it about last week's meeting, and things were said here that weren't exactly true, according to the council. She said that Mr. Starr came here, and I think he mentioned that the board, he was representing the board. She said that was not the case, that there was no formal vote, and Stanley was there on his own. So he wasn't representing the board, and
That's right.
I just wanted to,
I talked to Claire. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to clear that up and put it out there so everyone knows, because I think she was quoted in the paper through like a second name through another person, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
And she wanted me to convey that, so I just wanted to convey that for her. And I wasn't aware that the person that Mr. Starr was promoting or supporting was living out of town.
I think that's what his question
I did not
to
know
the
that
solicitor
to my ignorance, so I want to apologize for that, because, I mean, I will not vote for anyone that lives out of town. I think if you're gonna, someone, if you're gonna serve on a board, you should at least live in the town that you're serving on.
I agree with you.
Could I?
That's my personal feeling on it, so I just wanted to convey that through the chairman of the Council on Aging.
Yeah.
And let, just clear the air on that, because she was quite upset about it. And
Okay.
every right, every
Sure,
right
yeah.
to be, so.
Because it was, certainly it was represented as being, on
People.
behalf of the council.
Yeah. I know that wasn't the case, so I
Okay.
want to make sure everyone understands that.
Can I say one more thing?
One more thing, certainly, sir.
Thanks. I'll verify what Mark is saying, because I talked to Claire myself, and she was kind of upset that something was put in the paper that she didn't say.
Okay.
And so what Mark says, I did talk to Claire myself.
Not only yourself, but the rest of the board too. It wasn't a formal vote. There was no vote there.
Okay.
He wasn't their spokesperson.
We can only go on what
Right.
gets spoken.
Another thing, while I was
represented
on
to
the
us.
Council on Aging, it wasn't with Clinton, but when I drove for Lancaster, but I got sick and I had to leave because of health. I saved 2 people's lives, which I think was Buddy McGrell's mother-in-law was one of them. I think her name was Flanagan. She used to be a school teacher in Clinton one time. You probably remember. I don't remember.
Yeah.
And the other lady, she was at Bigelow Garden. She got a piece of candy caught in her throat, and I took her in the ladies' room, and I gave her such a whack that candy went flying out, and she sat on the toilet. She said, "Boy, Russ, thank you." So I felt good about that, too. I got a nice write-up and a nice plaque for that from the town of Lancaster, but I had to leave the job because of health reasons.
Okay. All right,
That's
thanks
all
for coming in.
That's all I got to say.
Thank you. And thank you for volunteering, too.
Well, I
It's a
like the
volunteer
elderly
position. It's
and,
nice to have 3 people from town
Yeah,
expressing
I
interest,
understand.
so we appreciate that.
All right, thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thanks, Russ.
We will try and take action, our goal will be to take action, Russ, at our next meeting, after the other 2 candidates come in.
Yeah, okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. What's that? Yeah, we'll move to old and new business. I don't see that on my,
Just-
oh, yes.
Just to notify the board, with deep regret, I today received a letter from Selectman Secretary Jaleesa Chenard indicating her resignation from the position to seek some better opportunities, and I wanted to notify the board of that and ask if the board wanted to proceed with that vacancy. But I'd like to thank Jaleesa for the time she's put in. She's been wonderful. sad to see her go, but I know she's got some good opportunities ahead of her in life, and I know she'll do well.
Well, Jaleesa, we certainly thank you on behalf of the board for your hard work and your number of years here supporting the office and taking all the calls that you take. I personally wish you the very best in your new endeavors. I think Mike was hoping for a little bit of a reconsideration on your part, but you'll do fine, and we wish you the very best, and you'll be missed up here at Town Hall. So good luck with it. And best.
Congratulations.
Thank you for your...
Congratulations. Hate to see you go, but I'm happy for you.
What I'd ask is that if the board would move that we advertise the position,
Absolutely.
so that we're not short here.
Absolutely.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yep. Under new business, you know, when I saw the Town Hall Use Commission report, I was concerned that there seems to be only 2 people consistently attending that. If we could send notice, Michael, to the other members, that if they're not going to be able to serve it consistently, we're only asking for the one night a month. If they can't attend, that we ask for them to step off that commission, and we try and find some other people to fill
Well, I
it.
think we do have a vacancy
Yeah, we
anyways.
do have one vacancy,
Okay.
and then there was another member who had been out of town and had made people aware of that.
Okay, so if we have a vacancy, could we repost it at least that, we're looking for someone? Because it's an injustice to the couple folks that are, your dad's been traveling, so he hasn't been around.
Missed that one meeting.
Yeah, but we need to make sure that we have some help there. Any other old or new business?
Just under, I'd like to move, I guess, committee reports.
Yep.
Actually. The Recycling Commission is probably going to be meeting within the next 2 to 3 weeks. We posted officially, and we're looking to do another transfer station type day in sometime probably in late April of this year. So that's what we're going to be meeting on, some of the other issues.
Very good. Any other committee reports? Being none, public comment? Is there any public comment?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is James Russell Finch. I go by Russ Finch. I'm here to make myself available for the Veterans Service Officer's job, also known as the Veteran Agent's job. I come down here tonight to introduce myself. I am a Vietnam vet, 6 years with British submarines. That was my job. I'm handicapped, but not because of service, not because of work. My body just decided the legs didn't want to work for a while. But I'm graduating. I came from a wheelchair and bed to a cane. But I do use a walk to get around. Like I said, I am a vet. I get things done. You might have read about me in the newspaper. I saved the house with the girls next door to me. It was being foreclosed. With the newspapers and the support I got, the house is now theirs again. Right now, I'm endeavored to raise money for a friend of mine who's dying of cancer, or has cancer. Hopefully he's going to make it. I hope so. He's a friend of mine. I'm putting on a benefit for him and raising money. Hope to raise a few $1,000s or more. But I'm a guy that can get things done. I've learned at my kitchen table, I can pick up the phone and call people and get things done. I'm not afraid to knock on somebody's door and say, hey, we need this. I understand.
Feel free.
Over the past 5 years, where I couldn't work, like I said, I went downhill and now I'm coming back uphill. But I learned a lot of things about Veterans Administration. A lot of good and a lot of bad. And Social Security is the same way. I learned a lot of good and a lot of bad. They do touch each other now and then. You can't have both. You can't have Social Security, you can't have veterans at the same time. They don't allow it. So I learned all that. I've been involved with the veterans. My wife and I go into the veterans shelter and cook. I'm presently going into Worcester for the computer course. They have a computer academy, they call it. I'm involved with that. I'm a member of the Legion Hall in Sterling, a member of the Franco-American Vets in Leominster. In Sterling, I'm on the fair committee. I've been on there for 20 years. Previously, I was on the Conservation Commission. I've been on several, like the Sewer Studies Committee, I've been on several committees studying things to decide what's good for the town, what's good for the people. I'm a man that gets things done. You know, I don't mind saying that, because I do. I get things done. Like I said, I'm a vet. I want to help the vets. If I had the job, I'd bring a lot more to it. I'd make sure that every town got a monthly report of what's coming up with the vets, what's available. You know, and make sure that that van comes out here once a month and plugs in somewhere. I like to see it plugged into the pole right across the street myself, with a donated meter by Mass Electric. So,
Well,
no offense to New England Power, which is not New England Power.
our process, I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but we've started a search committee.
Correct?
Selectman Yakabuchi is kind enough to serve on that, along with the town administrator and solicitor. And we're actually soliciting some members of the community.
Putting, for 2 weeks, we're gonna collect the.
Right, Friday.
Yeah, we voted on
You
that.
have any applicants?
Yeah, we've got several names.
So the process of putting the committee together, I'm not sure where you are on
Yeah, the
the public.
deadline is Friday. We've had several people that have given up their time and put their name in, and Friday's the deadline, so we do need to meet next week briefly on a bonding issue for the school, so if we have all that information, the board can take action next week and appoint the committee.
So our goal would be that we have the search committee appointed and in place next week, and then they'll be in a position to take in the applicants, yourself and any others that may be interested in the position, set up meetings and interviews with people, and then we'll act accordingly. Okay?
Are you going to come up with a written job description?
Yeah, there actually should be one already in place. If not, we'll certainly create one. And, yes?
I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, I know that you mentioned we had a meet next week. I guess I would make the request that we meet at 6 instead of 7, if it's only
That's
for-
fine. That's
It's
fine.
only to do that.
Yeah, it's the bar.
Yeah, we'll probably have two action items next Wednesday. One will be the bond, the band, actually, and two would be to make the appointments of, to fill out this committee, so we can get that committee rolling. Okay?
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
That's all right. So if, once this committee is put in place, the search committee, there will be a job description, responsibilities, things like that, that I would expect the committee to be able to give out to the applicants, and then we'll go forward from there. Our goal is to fill this position as quickly as we can.
I like that. I'm ready to go to work. I'm tired of making cookies.
Okay. We thank you for coming in.
I appreciate it, and I wish you would give me serious consideration for the job. I want the job.
Okay.
I want the job. And I know I can do it.
Very good.
Chris is a good man, and,
Yep.
you know, and I know the other agents around this area. I know I can do the job. I'll be proud to.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you for your interest.
Thanks.
You have a good night.
You too.
Stay warm.
Is there any other public comment? Barney? An observer?
As far as the budget process.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, before we
Yeah.
adjourn, I know that the administrator had supplied us with the 202 budget and the 203 budget and what we've expended to this point. And I know with the information that we received tonight, it looks like it won't be until at least Wednesday or Thursday of next week. So what I would suggest is that after we get the information, it'll probably serve us well if we had to do it on an off night to sit down with the administrator, maybe try to digest all of, because it's going to take some time to go through it, and it probably needs just the attention of the board sitting with the administrator to go over some type of a game plan and look to see what it all means once we get the figures.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell, as we mentioned in the discussion, what that figure is going to be, because it's a limited time to make the cuts, and because of the limited availability of defined money, because so much of the budget is personnel. $100,000 will make a big difference. So if the cut is
Sure.
200,000 or 300,000, that's a big cut. And I think we need to know that number before we start.
Before we start speculating.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Does
would-
no good.
Yeah, I mean, I would just suggest, Mr. Chairman, that once we get that and give the administrators some adequate time to
Yep.
try to plug that in and come up with, formulate something that we may, or I think would want to meet on an off night to try to just digest it and see where we're going to go.
Yep, that's fine. I think once we have the numbers and we can really dive into it, we'll be able to act more responsibly. So, that's fine. Thanks for putting this together as far as an update as to what we've spent to date.
We'll have additional information to add to that once we get better
Yeah.
numbers and we can give better breakdowns as to where everything is going.
Okay. Is there anything else from an informational you need to bring? Okay. So we do need to meet next Wednesday, folks. I know this is for a band issue for prior to the 1st of February, I believe, is why it needs to be voted on. And then we'll try and fill out this, the Veterans Agent Search Committee appointments if we can.
So, well, I'll move that we meet at 6 instead of 7.
Yeah, so I'll set the time for 6 o'clock.
It's our off week anyways.
Yeah. Is there any other discussion?
Move to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Second? All in favor?
Aye. On the next meeting, the summer practice.
It's chilly. It's cold. It is cold out. So I gotta find out who's screwing around with Mike.